Getting up with those things again for tuning into yet another video. Infamous coming at you live from the West Coast yet again. Sounds like California. Sounds like California. So anyways, I am currently trying to mount some CVO hard saddlebags on the Lowrider S. So I did pick up these brackets from TCMT. I believe they're like $30. Super cheap. You guys can see where I welded some additional pieces. So I'm just going to show you guys what I did, and hopefully you guys can, understand and maybe, modify or do your guys' own thing with this. So keep in mind, you can buy these from Advanblack, and I believe they're $240 for the Lowrider S, which is pretty expensive, all right? It's pricey. These are for a twin cam Softail. So you can see, like I said, you'll have to modify these. I did see the blockhead video where Chris, I believe, Sick Wide Glide, he actually fabricated some of those brackets from Advanblack. I believe they probably improved the design. I'm not entirely sure if you have to modify it, or maybe it was the saddlebags that they used it on. These aftermarket stuff, you can never be too sure. So anyways, because I'm just saying, you could buy those for $250, but you might have to fabricate depending on which saddlebags you have, because the saddlebags that they have in that video was Nasty Hog, and the brackets were from Advanblack. So maybe there was some fitment issues. So who knows? Like I said, that video is probably about a year or 2 years old, so maybe they've improved the overall design. But anyways, getting on to my setup. All right, so this is the TCMT bracket, $40. All you got to do is just weld a couple pieces, and I believe it might fit. All right, so you can see where I added the extra additional metal, of course. I also went ahead and I placed and I did some filler. This is JB Weld, of course. So I still have to clean these up. I still have to sand them down and stuff like that. So I was gonna move these forward. Let me put one of them down. So I was gonna move this forward, and I was gonna use this. So this was gonna be my mounting point, and then I was shifting the actual piece forward. But this is what I originally did this. And what happened was this hole wasn't lining up anymore. So somewhere's where the actual passenger foot peg mounts, it was like somewhere over here. So that was obviously no-go. So then I went ahead and I re-welded an additional piece over here on this side. Because from this point to that point on the Lowrider S, on the eyelets, of course, that's 7 inches. About 7 inches. Measure your own stuff. All right, don't take my word for it, but I believe it's about 7 inches. So that's why I welded this extra piece so I can move this towards this rear. But then, of course, like I said, this shifted the saddlebag bracket too forward, and it wasn't lining up with this. I was going to weld another piece here, but I still want to use my passenger foot pegs. So this is when I went ahead and I welded this other piece. So if you want this to work, I believe you just have to weld this piece. So this is a 2-inch piece welded onto the original bracket, and basically I just used this as a level to kind of give me a guide of where this is supposed to be at. I wasn't gonna eyeball it. I didn't want to tack weld it on the bike and then get all the sparks and all that other stuff. So I just used, of course, a vice grip with the flat end. Clamp that on there so it was straight with the original mounting bracket or the mounting place. And then I just welded this, tack welded it, removed the vice grip, and then I finished my weld. And then, of course, we have the JB weld, and then that adds an additional strength to the actual bracket. So these are not going anywhere. All right. So now that I have these, like I said, I'm still in the process of cleaning these up. So the next step is to, of course, trim this off. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these. I'm gonna call them dog ears. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these off on both ends. And then I'm going to mount this end, of course, onto the bike, onto the frame where the passenger foot pegs go. And then hopefully that gives me an idea of where I'm gonna drill my holes in. And like I said, I really wanted to move these up because I do have, of course, the SPC exhaust. All right, so it's very tight, but I believe we are going to clear the exhaust. That's an issue that they were having at the Blockhead channel. So I am shifting these brackets up by about, I say, half an inch. So this is the original mounting area. I'm moving it down here. All right, so I'm moving it by like maybe 3/4 of an inch. I really want to mount these a little bit higher. I was even considering mounting the these parts, these pieces. I was considering mounting them down here, so that would have shifted the bracket itself by maybe even 2 inches. But I don't know. Like I said, we're going to try to do this first. If I want the saddlebags mounted higher, I might just weld an additional piece down here. So stay tuned. I'm going to go ahead and mount this up and see how it looks on the bike. I'll put the saddlebags on there just to kind of get an idea where it's going to sit, and if I am 100% happy with where it mounts, hopefully 3/4 inch higher, and if it looks good, then we'll go ahead and clean this up and do all that jazz and paint them. Or we'll probably, if I want them higher, I'll have to, of course, weld an additional piece down here so I can shift them up by another 1.5 inches, and then of course add some more metal over here so I could shift this up. So I'll have another piece of metal there welded. So you guys can definitely do this. In case you guys are wondering, this metal, I purchased it at Home Depot. Alright, so this is the same metal that I used on my FXLRS Sportster bracket. So they have it as a 1/8 of an inch, but it's really thick. I believe it's like 1/4 inch, but they have it as 1/8 of an inch. It's just a piece of bar, and it was like I believe it was like $14. The price has really gone up on all of this material stuff. So like I said, I just cut the I used this angle right here. I cut that, and then I just kind of cleaned it up here with the grinder. You guys can see I cleaned it up, of course, and now I'm going to clean it up again with the JB weld. Just sand them down and clean them up. You guys can see the back of it as well. So I just used this line here, cut it, and then I just lined them up and welded it. So it's welded onto the actual tubing. You guys were wondering my settings on the welder. I use a stick welder. All of this stuff is from Temu, guys. So I used a stick welder. I used it at 101 amps. That seems to do the job. As far as penetration on all this other stuff, it's 110 volts, so it's a 120 volt. It's not 240, but I'm not worried about it. Like I said, we have the JB weld, we have the stick weld, good penetration. I welded it all the way on the inside, and then of course I welded the back. So not only is it welded here, it's also welded all the way down to the back of this as well. You guys want to see my ugly welds on the other bracket? You guys can see them. You can see that's metal right there, of course. On this side, you can see all of that is metal. So I believe we got good penetration on the weld, and I'm not worried about it. So we just got to clean them up. We got to do a lot of cleaning. You guys can see them right there. You can see a little bit of my weld. I'm not a welder, and I am not a fabricator. So you guys can see it right there. All right, so we just got to clean these up, and then we got to mount it onto the bike, and hopefully I'm happy with how high they sit, because I really want that King of the Baggers look on the saddlebags. If you guys know what I'm talking about, just Google King of the Baggers, or you know what, I'll have an image up. King of the Baggers. I like the way the saddlebags sit super high, and I believe it's like 2 or 3 inches they're mounted higher. Alright, so here's the update on the bracket itself. You guys can see I'm trying to fit it. I already went ahead and I placed some masking tape on the back of the bracket so I can see my pencil marks or my pen marks. You can see that already fitted it, of course. Like I mentioned, this is for a twin cam Softail, this bracket, so I am using some spacers. I believe you only need a 1-inch spacer because the mounting area is pretty far off the mounting location. Went ahead to remove the bolts underneath. Like I said, took my pen and I just fit it right underneath, and I made my mark like so, like that, so you guys can see how it looks. And that's pretty much how it's gonna sit on the bike. I already grabbed the saddlebag and I put it on there, it sits about like right here. So I'm guessing the lid's gonna just barely clear my seat. It's fairly close, of course. I did not put the rubber pieces underneath the saddlebag, so it's gonna lift it up by a quarter or a half an inch still. I actually wanted it to be a tad bit taller than that, but anything else I would have to heavily modify the bracket. I mean, this is just a little bit of modification. It's not that bad for $30, or you could buy the Advanblack, which is $220, $220, and yeah, I guess it's a direct bolt on. So like I mentioned, add these welding these extra pieces. That way you don't have to modify this one, or you could do it the other way. You could add this piece and then add an additional piece over here that will extend it. That way you could reach down over there. You could also, of course, move the bracket back and then add a piece onto this mounting area. So you could extend this by probably another inch or two. That way you can move the whole bracket. But like I mentioned, after putting the saddlebag, it lines up like right here. This is where it lines up with the rear fender. So if I were to shift this anywhere further back, I'm now going to be lined up with the tail light. So I mean, it depends however you want it to look or whatever you're trying to achieve. Alright, so here we have the bracket. It's already installed. You guys can see, obviously. I just got to trim off a little bit off of this edge right here to kind of clear the alloy art turn signal struts that I have here. I got to just trim it down so I can get it nice and flush. Alright, so there it is. I still have to clean these up. As you guys can see, I already cut off the top of these. As far as the spacer, it's 1.5 inches. Alright, it's exactly 1.5 inches. And I found the black ones, the black spacer, so you can't even see it. It blends in very nice. I think it's gonna look pretty unique, pretty good. Alright, you guys can see where it ends right here. Look at this side. Right on the money. Exactly in the same spot. Right there. Right there. So like I said, these are the TCNT twin cam. Somehow I really messed up this hole. You guys can see how hideous. I don't know what I did. Somehow I marked it, and I marked it about 1/2 inch off, and I was holding it up to the other bracket, and I was wondering, why is this so off by 1/2 inch? But I went ahead and I drilled it. I should have double checked it. I think if I would double check it, I don't know, somehow when I marked it, I think I was at a bad angle or something I did wrong when I marked it. This one's alright, just this one was off by like 1/2 inch, so that's why there's a huge hole there. But of course, with the washer and the actual bolt, I think it'll be fine. I just gotta clean up the top and we're pretty much it. Same thing on this side. You guys can see 1/2 inch spacer to get it to fit flush with the actual bike. So the spacer itself, these they sell them in by fives for the cheapest. So this is 1.5 inch black spacer. You guys can see, I think it blends in pretty nicely. And as far as the clearance on the exhaust, we have a lot of clearance. All right, if you've seen Holy Shift or you've seen Blockhead, this is where they had clearance issues. All right, I still have, I say about 1 inch of clearance right here between the bracket and the and my exhaust pipe. So I have a little bit of clearance still here, and then of course the saddlebag sits on top, and then you have the cushion underneath the saddlebag, so that adds about 1/2 inch. So I believe we should be fine as far as the clearance. Let me go grab a saddlebag real quick. All right, so there's the saddlebag. I went ahead and put the lid on. You guys can see the clearance between the seat and the saddlebag. It's very close, maybe about 1 inch from the seat, so I should be fine if I'm seated there. I wanted them, like I said, I wanted them a little bit taller, maybe about another 1/2 inch, but we still have the cushions. I don't have the inserts in there yet, so this it's still going to lift up a tad bit more. And you can see the clearance between the exhaust and the saddlebag. There's no issues there. All right, so we have plenty of clearance between the exhaust. So if you do this method, you can save yourself quite a bit of money, and you don't have to deal with the clearance issues. So we just got to clean up this bracket, but you can see the spacing. That's like one of my concerns, is the spacing between the fender and the saddlebag, and it looks like it's about man, that looks maybe about 2 inches to 1.5 inches. I'm not digging that, but I mean, it is what it is. So this is currently what I've been, working on, and you can see the spacing between the back as well. It's pretty noticeable. I'm not a huge fan of how big the gap is between the fender and the and the saddlebag. That's quite a bit. All right. Another thing that I also quite don't like is how much the saddlebag sticks out past the fender. So you can see it sticks out quite a bit. All right. Once I have the bracket, maybe it'll straighten up a little bit, but it looks like, between where it bends and where the saddlebag ends, I mean, we're talking about maybe 4 inches, 5 inches. I'm digging it. The bracket looks pretty good. It doesn't stand out too much. That spacer, I don't think it's something you'll notice. You guys can let me know in the comments. As far as, torque and the pressure or the bending or the torque on the bracket, there isn't very any. I think it looks pretty good. Like I said, the Advanblack and the hogs, the nasty hogs, will sit, lower. I think this is a much better look. So I just gotta, clean up the bracket and paint it, and then we'll have everything kind of installed, and this bike's gonna look completely different once it's all said and done. But we'll see what we can do with that gap in the back of the fender. This is massive. I mean, the Leather Pro sits very close, so it's very clean look. This one, man, it's just a huge. Yeah, it's like 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So thanks for tuning in. In case you were wondering, that's my attempt of making my FXLRS bracket, or FXLRS touring bracket, out of a TCMT twin cam Softail bracket. That's $40, and of course a couple spacers, and you also need some longer bolts. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. Life's Risk. Get out there and ride. Later.